the Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is based at Ahmedabad. But that chamber was also formed in the year 1960. So 20 years after we were established, they came into existence after the formation of the Gujarat state. You see, earlier it was like a Bombay state. Gujarat and Maharashtra was the same state. So this is the history and a lot more things. I mean, you just have to get in touch with us to understand the depth of our involvement with the trade and industry people and a lot of things we will be discussing over a period of time. So we are happy to have you here, and we are happy to announce at this point of time that there are already 80 participants attending and attending this webinar, which is a very healthy number of persons attending this webinar. We have with us the in-charge president of the Southern Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As I've already told you, he is also the former president of the Surat Diamond Association, and he is the current regional chairman of the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, taking care of everything that is associated with the gem and jewelry business. So we have Mr. Dinesh Navadia, and I invite Mr. Dinesh Navadia to give his formal welcome speech. Dinesh bhai.
Yes, sir. Namaskar. Her Highness Miss Andrea Kuhn, the Consul General in the Consulate General of South Africa at Mumbai. Mr. Dan Hoff, Consul Economic in the Consulate General of South Africa at Mumbai. Our past president and today's program moderator Sri Rohitbhai Mehta. Managing Committee member Sri Manishbhai Kapadia. Other invited guests from the industry, participants from the chamber, friends from the media, and many colleagues from the judiciar. Very good evening and very warm welcome. The third international interaction of the post-COVID area at SGCCR. Today we have with us Her Highness Miss Andrea Kuhn, the Consul General of the South Africa at Mumbai, with us with her Economic Consul of the Deliberate of the Business Opportunity. India and South Africa has a historical relationship between the two countries, particularly Gujarat and Africa. Countries has business relationship from the hundreds years of year. There are many Gujarati businessmen who are running big business in Africa, including the South Africa. India is one of the largest purchase of the coal from the South Africa in the world. The other commodities they import are gold and rough diamonds, and Surat is the hub of the diamond polishing in the world. The southern Gujarat region, cherished with the industrial development from the Bharuch to Umargaon, the major centers in our region like Surat is known to have a large presence of the petrochemical, synthetic textile, diamond, jewelry, and jari. Bardoli for the horticulture product, Dan for the bamboo products, Vapi and Ankleshwar for the chemical and pharma, Navsari agri-processed goods, and Valsad is the fruit and juice. This member associated with our chamber from all this area, our region can offer multiplied product for the trade with the South Africa. The two trade in meaning goods and agri commodity can bring economic harmony between our two regions of the great nation, and this I wish the today session may be able to provide satisfied information of the tradesmen of the both of countries in intrigue new dialogues from the business promotion with each other. I extend warm wishes to all participants to business session, and is the confirmed that the today interaction will pave with a new way in the establishing economic benefit for the all over in the parts of COVID area. Thank you.
So thank you, Dinesh bhai. Thank you for your welcome address. And just to add on to what Mr. Dinesh bhai has already said, Madam, relations between India and South Africa are just about amazing, and we also take pride in telling whenever there is a program with South Africa. In fact, your diplomats also like to say this thing, and we also are extremely happy to say that India sent to South Africa a Gandhi, and you sent us back a Mahatma. So that shows how much we value our relations with South Africa. Also, South Africa is a part of the BRICS association. So that shows how much value Indian government is also giving to the South African region and the South African government. And also a lot of amazing things definitely shall evolve in business if we take the right initiatives forward. So that is a small recap about our activities and about the chamber. I'm happy once again to announce that we already have 91 participants in this webinar. So, and the number is growing. So before we go to the next part, for the benefit of all the participants here, I would like to introduce our guests for this evening, for guests for the webinar, get the guest speakers. It's a pleasure to have with us Her Excellency, Her Excellency Miss Andrea Kuhn, as the Consul General of South Africa in Mumbai. She joined the South African Consulate General Mission in Mumbai on 17th of December 2019. And is in charge of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Goa, Madhya Pradesh, and Telangana. So 8 states is under her control, and that gives her very wide powers to interact with the business community and the political community. Ms. Kuhn graduated in 1989 from the University of Pretoria in South Africa with law degree. She joined the South African Diplomatic Mission Service in February 1991. She served in various capacities in the Department of International Relations and Cooperations, including she was the private secretary to the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperations between 1998 and 2008. Prior to coming to India, she was director of South and Central Asia. So she has a very good knowledge about everything that is happening in South in the Asian continent. And her previous assignments included, she was the South African Consulate General. She was in the South African Consulate General in New York, in USA, and in Berlin in Germany. So that is a very brief introduction of our very important guest and the keynote speaker for today's evening, Miss Andrea Kuhn. And before I would like to give the introduction of Mr. Dean later on when he takes his presentation forward. So that with that brief introduction of Her Excellency Miss Andrea Kuhn, I would like to invite you, madam, to give your presentation and your speech to the audience. The floor is yours, ma'am. Your mic is muted. Mic.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
now I can join you. It's a big honor for me to join you today, and I'm especially pleased also to be with you, although it's from Mumbai, to be part of this meeting that has been organized by the Chamber. And a special word of thanks also to the acting president or president in charge, Mr. Dinesh Navidai, and his team. Thank you also, Mr. Mehta, for all your assistance in putting this webinar together on business opportunities in South Africa. I have to admit that when I arrived in India in December, it was my intention to visit the state of Gujarat within the first quarter because I am well aware of the enormous opportunities and the strong ties specifically with the state of Gujarat we have with South Africa. It was also definitely on the agenda to pay a visit to Surat, fully recognizing the importance of the city in the state of Gujarat. Unfortunately, my plans got derailed as so many other people's plans, but I do still look forward to paying a visit in the near future. It is, however, a pleasure to still join you today and having this very important meeting. I think, as world leaders and business leaders look at measures to overcome the consequences of the global pandemic, it is important that we do not forget the trusted partners and trusted friends. And as you mentioned, India and South Africa has a long and deep history. We are friends for many, many centuries. And it's important also that this trusted partnership that we have with each other continues. And in times when things are tough, that we also look towards each other. South Africa, therefore, values its partnership with India that has now transformed into a dynamic economic and political relationship and is driven at the highest level. And in this regard, I wish to recall the very successful visit by President Ramaphosa to India in 2019. He paid a state visit and also had the honor to be the chief guest at the Indian Republic Day celebrations in January 2019. During this state visit, a 3-year strategic program of cooperation was signed that set out specific and measurable deliverables between South Africa and India. The aim was to fast track the outcomes, ensure that relations deepen, and that there's also significant progress in the areas that were identified during the state visit. Also during the state visit, there was a SA India business roundtable and a business forum to stress the importance of business relations between South Africa and India. Bilateral relations between South Africa and India are managed at 2 levels. There's a senior officials meeting that takes place annually, and there's also a bilateral joint ministerial commission that is held at the level of minister. And both of these committees and forums have a dedicated trade commission to focus on enhancing trade and investment relations between our 2 countries. The last session of the Joint Ministerial Commission was held in January 2020 in New Delhi. It was co-chaired by our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, together with the Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jai Shankar. And it was an excellent opportunity to follow up and review the decisions of this state visit and the 3-year strategic program of cooperation, and also to ensure that the focus on the key areas that were identified, that it's back there, and to ensure that there's progress in these areas. And some of those areas, I can mention them briefly. Those sectors include the agro-processing, mining, the pharmaceuticals, automotive, and also infrastructure. It was also agreed in all of these forums that there's enormous potential for us to grow trade volumes between South Africa and India. Many hundreds of agreements have been signed between South Africa and India to create the framework for structured and formal bilateral relations and enhanced cooperations. Most importantly, the last one that was signed during the visit by our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation in January this year was a visa simplification agreement with a specific aim to create an enabling environment for our business people to fast-track cooperation and ensure that obstacles that were faced in the past can now be dealt with. Unfortunately, to put this agreement in full practice was, we occurred, of course, a stumbling block, but we look forward to, once all the restrictions have been lifted, that the full value of this agreement can come to force. One of also the announcements that was made is that there will be an e-visa that will be rolled out for Indian citizens. So just to show you the commitment from South Africa's side to deal with challenges that were there in the past. And we look forward also to take full opportunity and to optimize this situation that has now been created. Of course, South Africa has not been spared by the outcome and the impact of the coronavirus that has disrupted economies worldwide. And in this regard, President Ramaphosa announced relief measures and also a financial package of over 500 billion South African rand, which translated roughly around 30 billion US dollars, specifically to look at transforming South Africa's economy to achieve sustainable recovery, but also an inclusive economic growth for the future. There was an ambitious and sustainable infrastructure development program that was launched together with the private sector, with new investments in a couple of sectors that includes energy, water and sanitation, roads and bridges, human settlements, health and education, digital infrastructure, and public transport. These are all significant job creator multipliers and include an integrated resource plan to see the expansion of industrialization to accelerate international trade. South Africa is currently at level 2 of the lockdown measures, with level 1 being a normal situation going back to the days before COVID. So the economy has completely opened up and South Africa is ready for business. I have to also mention that South Africa's financial system has remained relatively resilient despite the COVID situation. So South Africa still remains a favorable partner as a trade partner and also as an investment destination. Before I conclude, I think it's also important to mention a little bit more about South Africa also in the global world. You've mentioned BRICS, which is of course for us a very important fora. We take great value and it's also one of our key priorities in our foreign policy. We look forward to India taking the chair next year to also see how we can take the agenda further. And today our foreign ministers are participating in a G20 meeting. So we cooperate not only bilaterally very well, but also on a multilateral level. And of course, when one looks at South Africa, you have to look at it as part of, as a member country of the African continent. In 2020, one of the key priorities for the African continent was the launch of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. South Africa is currently the chair of the African Union, and under President Ramaphosa's able leadership, have been driving to conclude and finalize this agreement with the aim to launch it by the end of the year. Initially, the date to launch it was the 1st of July, but of course, we had to change the time frames in the current situation. This free trade agreement aims for 54 countries of the African continent to forge a single market of 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. It will fast track the economic integration of the African continent, and any businessman have to acknowledge that this is a game changer that one has to take into consideration when one looks at the African continent, or then specifically as South Africa, which can become the springboard into the rest of the continent. So that is a very important development that we should not forget. And probably we need to have a much further and deeper discussion about the opportunities that this free trade agreement will create, especially also for our relations with India, which we value as a member of the Global South. Before I conclude and hand over to Dean, I think it's very important, and you've touched on that, Mr. Mehta, is the deep people-to-people relations that exist between our two nations. With strong historical links, fraternal ties, and shared values and objectives. We share two of the world's icons. You've mentioned them, Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. And we cherish also that both of them brought us also closer together in the shared history that I mentioned. South Africa has a large population of people of Indian descent, many from Gujarat, I've since learned, and I also look forward to come and meet them once I come to visit Gujarat and specifically Surat. We share a vibrancy of culture and of people, and it's not only limited to good food, but also to a good match of cricket. Our people have been trading for centuries, and there's many ties that binds us. And I will be amiss not to mention, considering that it is Tourism Month in South Africa for September, to remind all the participants of South Africa's beauty and splendor, and that you all ensure that you put South Africa on your list as a must-visit destination in the near future, because we look forward to welcome you all to our shores. With that introduction, I'm going to hand over to Dean because I think his presentation speaks specifically to the sectors and the opportunities, and I'm going to therefore hand over to him. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, ma'am, so much, and I'm really happy to hear a lot of good things about South Africa and the opportunities. And you mentioned about a very important development, that is the FTA between 54 African countries and the enormous opportunities that it is going to create for business. And I'm sure Mr. Dean is enthused more by that, and he would like to talk a lot about that so that the Indian public can understand how to encash on this important development. 3.4 US trillion dollars is a huge amount, and coming together, and it's like and I'm sure the African Union model will be designed more looking at all the problems that were existing with the European Union. So it's an evolved model, understanding what better we can do when countries come together, so that it's a win-win situation for everyone. You mentioned about tourism month, and I will would only like to urge on you that if there are any special packages that the government is thinking of giving, then you can send us some information about them, and we will be happy to circulate that amongst our members, because quite a few of our members would definitely like to go to South Africa during this tourism month also, provided of course the international borders are open and the flights are operational. Otherwise, right now, that is the biggest issue that we have in mind. So before and thank you so much, ma'am, for your very good words. And now, before I go to hand over the floor to Dean, I would like to give his introduction. Uh, Mr. Dean Hoff is the Consul Economic. He's the Consul Economic in the South African Consulate at Mumbai. He is associated with the DTI, that is the Department of Trade and Industry in the Ministry of Commerce in the government of South Africa, and has been associated with a lot of economic activities in various countries. He was also associated with Invest South Africa in South Africa. His primary duty is to boost export from South Africa to India, and to encourage Indian business people to invest in South Africa. And he will definitely talk to us more about the important government, the important core segments of the government, and also the various schemes and the various incentives given by the government. So with that very small and brief introduction, Mr. Dean, I've had the pleasure of meeting him in his office some 8-9 months back when he was he just had landed in Mumbai. And he is a very young guy, very young, very cooperative, and very helpful. And before I hand over to him, just to keep on record in this particular webinar, Madam, we have already touched a figure of 100 participants. So that is a very healthy sign, and I'm sure the interest that people have in South Africa is of great value to you and to us as a chamber also. And we are happy to have organized this webinar. So, my dear friends, it is now the floor is for Mr. Dean to take it forward and tell us about how we can do real business with South Africa. Mr. Dean, you have to unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for that warm welcome. I'd like to begin by sharing a video to set the scene of the business environment in South Africa.
Dean, we are not having the audio.
Okay. Let me start again.
Yeah, you start again. You have to click the two boxes at the bottom.
Okay.
You can start sharing again and click the two boxes at the in the bottom. Huh? So Sunil, તારી પાસે ચાલુ થશે ત્યાંથી?
Yes, sir.
So, Dean, the video that you sent is the same as this one.
Yes.
Then can I start it from here?
No problem.
Okay. Sunil, start.
Great.
Thank you. That was great. And before you start, Dean, I just want to mention, I just noticed that Ms. Sunanda Rajendran, the Secretary General of the Indo-African Chamber of Commerce, is here with us. And we would like her to also give her views at a later point of time. Sunanda Ben, stay with us. I will take you on board so that you can also share your views with us. Okay. Dean, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's appropriate to begin with a brief introduction on South Africa. Instead of going through all the usual demographics, I think I'll focus on some nice fast facts. The country has a population of 59 million people. As was previously mentioned, we are a member of BRICS. And in terms of the interest rate, which is always key for businessmen, we're looking at a rate of around 7%. So that's the cost to borrow money from the bank. Inflation is currently sitting at below 4% for the year 2019. And in the year 2021, we're expecting positive growth of 3.2% off the back of negative growth during this COVID period of 8.1%. Other interesting facts to be shared would be that we are the country with the most Fortune 500 companies present as regional or corporate headquarters in South Africa. We have over 180 of them. Other interesting facts that I would probably think are very relevant for business people would be that the cost of doing business in South Africa is relatively low, comparable to other countries in the world. So the minimum wage would be $1.20 per hour. You'll find that the cost of prime real estate in terms of office space and warehousing would also be a fraction of the cost when compared to other nations, specifically looking at your developed countries. And also, interestingly enough, we have a large talent pool that is capable and able to meet the demands of different sectors across the economy. So by way of example, most graduates in South Africa are coming out of the faculty that deals with science, technology, and finance. And supporting that would be vocational training, where we have several 100,000 students enrolled, graduating different levels each year, able to support you from a technical perspective. In terms of our global exports, in 2019, South Africa exported $105 billion worth of goods. Most people would know South Africa as a mineral and gold country, and that reflects in terms of our exports. You'll see that our major exports are still mineral products. Gold accounts for 13.65%, platinum 6.65%. And part of my role in India is to help to diversify that export mix and to look at more value-added exports that are not only minerals, but also manufactured goods. And you'll see that other key items for us would be automotives, cars, citrus, manganese. We also quite adept at the export of services. So there we're looking at travel and tourism. We have established quite a robust BPO sector in South Africa, focusing on the international market, servicing the likes of Amazon and certain major airlines in the world. Maybe just to touch on some of the specific items that we are looking at promoting, South Africa is very strong in automotive manufacturing, and aligned to that would be the components and the parts that go into an automotive vehicle. So that's one of the key sectors that we feel there's immense potential in India. And some of the sub-segments would be the parts of motor vehicles, vehicles themselves, and aligned to that would be parts of aircraft, boats, and components. Other key sector we'd look at would be agricultural exports. Currently, we know that in India, many people enjoy our citrus fruit and our apples, as well as our wine. And we feel that there's a lot of potential to further grow this, expanding more into other fruit types. Cherries is an area that's quite interesting. We also have blueberries that are growing. We have a very robust aquaculture sector that we are looking at promoting as well. We're looking at potential fish exports to India. Besides that, growing what we already have. I think other markets that would be interesting would be along the lines of capital equipment. As India looks to become more self-reliant, South Africa has expertise specifically in the mining sector and with regards to capital equipment. So that's more along the lines of your actual machinery that goes into the mining. But besides that, there's a lot of technical expertise, specifically related to deep level mining, with South Africa having some of the deepest mines in the world. If we focus specifically on our relationship with India, you'll see that in 2019, our trade volume in terms of exports to India was approximately $4 billion. In return, we imported goods to the value of about $3.9 billion, with a slight trade surplus in South Africa's favor. But as you can see from the graphic, in terms of our aim to diversify investments, we have our work cut out for us at the Consulate, as most of our exports to India are dominated by mineral products and precious minerals. So taking into account the previous sectors that we discussed, we feel those in themselves offer the best opportunity and would be a key part of our work program for the year going ahead. As mentioned by both Mr. Mehta and the Consul General, the relationship with India and South Africa is quite immense and long-standing, and this is graphically represented on screen now with the number of investments and companies doing business in South Africa. So you'll see in total we have 32 projects from 2013 up to 2020. And these projects are across all different sectors. Business services, electricity, customer care, logistics, manufacturing. And some of the key investors in South Africa would be some of the well-known brands and names in India: Wipro, Tata, Cipla, JSW, Jindal, to name a few. The list in itself is not exhaustive. And I'm happy to say that even in the time of COVID, we are experiencing a very positive interest in investing in South Africa and using South Africa as a platform to trade onto the continent. So taking advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, trying to tap into that market size of $3.4 billion and a population of 1.3 billion people. And key in achieving that is South Africa's role on the continent, where we don't view the continent specifically as a market, but as a partner. And part of the responsibilities of South Africa is to help develop supply chains in these countries. So to make sure that they do have industrialization, and which helps to support the capacity to purchase and to manufacture goods and export themselves, and to provide employment and economic growth to each country on the continent. Supporting our investment environment are numerous special economic zones. You'll see they are dotted around the country. Each one does have specific areas of focus. You'll find that, for example, the ones on the coast are supported by ports. So there's normally a key area of export focus. So if we take ones in the Eastern Cape, for example, towards the bottom map of South Africa, you'll find that there are large automotive companies present there, and automotive and light manufacturing and heavy manufacturing are key in those sectors. You'll find a big province to the left-hand side of the map. You'll see there's a representation called Uppington. And in that area of the country, we're looking at potentially renewable energy. But basically, we are looking at using these special economic zones to stimulate growth through employment creation, and also to export and further support South Africa's position in terms of investment and exports onto the continent and into the world. Now let's touch specifically on sectors of opportunity. I think this would be the most relevant for your members. One of the key manufacturing sectors in South Africa is the automotive sector. And you'll see that we are well established. We export our vehicles to numerous countries around the world. And basically, the support that provided here is government support, which we'll touch on in a few minutes. But we feel that in terms of the sector, a strong contributor to the performance is also the trade agreements that we do have in place. So you'll notice that the export destinations that we mentioned there are the EU, North America, for example, and supporting that would be our trade agreements with those specific regions. With the European Union, we have a free trade agreement, which encompasses the South African Customs Union, which is neighboring countries to South Africa. Those countries would be Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Eswatini, and Mozambique, in terms of the agreement with the European Union. And in terms of the agreement with the United States, we are participants in the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And that encompasses 39 sub-Saharan African countries. And South Africa is one of the largest beneficiaries of this agreement. And one of our key items would be agricultural exports, as include, and also, automotive exports to these regions. So in terms of why invest in South Africa, one reason would obviously be this potential market access, thanks to the trade agreements that we've just touched on. The other one would be that we have a developed sector with 500 tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. We have most of the OEMs present in South Africa. We have an attractive investment environment where government is actively involved, looking at enabling policies. And in terms of automotive, we also include the mining sector. So one of the big opportunities to mention here would be the opportunity for mining related equipment. We have what we call a mining charter that requires mining companies to procure 70% of mining equipment from South African based manufacturers. And of this, 60% should be local content. This is, again, a major driver in terms of the automotive sector. Other key initiatives would be that over 15 billion Rand, so approximately $1 billion, has been invested in the expansion of productive capacity. And that would be specifically by the major OEM producers and by the component manufacturers. So in terms of what we actually produce, I think the representation on the right-hand side of the screen gives you a nice idea of what's produced in South Africa. So you can see it's most of the components and parts that would go into manufacturing of an automobile. Casting your attention to the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we have 3 specific areas or clusters for the automotive sector in South Africa. And I won't touch into too much detail about who's where, but just to touch on that, Tata is based in Roslyn, just outside of Pretoria, which is the capital city of South Africa, which is very close to Johannesburg, which we can say is the economic capital of South Africa and the equivalent of Mumbai. In terms of where we see the actual opportunities, we believe there's opportunities in the manufacturing of air conditioning, engines, radiators, axles, body parts, catalytic converters, making use of the platinum and minerals that are in South Africa, suspension, steering wheels, ignitions, and lighting equipment. And maybe an interesting fact to share with the participants is that in 2018, South Africans were able to choose from 49 passenger car brands and 3,716 model derivatives, which provided them with the widest choice to market size ratio in the world. The second element to touch on would be, as mentioned, the government support. And this is through the South African Automotive Master Plan, which looks at positioning South Africa sector to 2035. We do have national incentives. So depending on what activity you are looking at specifically in this sector, there would be the volume assembly allowance, the production incentive, the automotive investment scheme, the people carrier investment scheme, also schemes to support innovation, and also skills development is always at the heart of industrial development. So there we have support from universities and vocational training institutes. The next sector, I think that offers a lot of opportunity and synergy between India and South Africa is agro-processing. You'll see that this sector is also quite significant in terms of its contribution, and certain elements of it would warrant extra attention. So the map on the right-hand side shows you that there's different crops grown around the country in South Africa. You'll find that like with India, different regions have different temperatures and different climates. So the citrus and the pears that India enjoys from South Africa would be grown in the Western Cape, as the wine that the Indians enjoy would come from the Western Cape as well. But due to the diverse climate and geological conditions, we feel that South Africa is well suited for cultivated crops. We are one of the largest producers of macadamia nuts in the world, one of the largest producers of maize, grapes, lemons, oranges, and chicken as well. So this sector itself offers opportunity, and the specific opportunities will be around food-based opportunities. So it's fruit and vegetable canning, tropical fruit juice processing, oilseed production. If we look at non-food based opportunities, we're looking at the extraction of high value additives, nutraceuticals, commercial planting of indigenous flowers is another example. And in terms of support schemes, the government offers an agro-processing support scheme, We have a national agro-processing forum, and financial assistance is provided by the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa through the Agro-processing and Agricultural Strategic Business Unit. We have a land bank, and we have agricultural finance readily available through the large commercial banks of South Africa. I just want to briefly touch on pharmaceuticals. South Africa's pharmaceutical and medical device sectors are the largest and most advanced on the African continent. The medical device sales and pharmaceutical sales have doubled in the last 10 years, and we expect them to reach 48 billion and 19 billion this year, sorry, the previous year. The country has advanced manufacturing capabilities, which include biotechnology manufacturing and strong R&D. And South Africa, interestingly enough, is the only South African Development Community member that meets the World Health Organization's good manufacturing practice. And this positions us quite favorably as a gateway onto the Southern African market for the manufacturers of pharmaceutical products. And we do expect in the next few years, specifically 5 years, that sales should increase by 50%. So of the numerous advantages that we feel this sector has to offer would be the manufacture and supply of medical drugs for diseases such as HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, and your lifestyle diseases like diabetes. There's also immense opportunity for the development and manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients. I think that's one of the sectors that have been highlighted globally now with the outbreak of COVID, is that APIs have become very strategic and in demand, and each country needs to ensure that they have their own source of APIs to make sure that there's continuity in terms of pharmaceutical production. There's also a large market for the development of generics and the manufacturing of biological-based drugs and biotherapeuticals. In terms of what support government has to offer, we would look at financial support, regulatory support, and R&D support. And the map on the right-hand side shows you where the clusters of pharmaceutical activity are. And one interesting fact that I would like to share with the audience is that in 1972, a South African physicist invented the first CAT scan. So the CAT scan was invented in South Africa. I'm not too sure many people are aware of that. In terms of investment services, through the Consulate and in working in partnership with InvestSA, we offer facilitation to the entire investment value chain. We provide specialist advisory services to investors. We coordinate effectively across the different functions and lines of government. We also act as a facilitation window of clearance for registrations, licensing, and permits. We also provide readily up-to-date information on incentives and sector information. We also coordinate the regulatory reform roadmap. So InvestSA back in South Africa is responsible for improving the ease of doing business in South Africa. And besides that, we work with intergovernmental coordination, which means that we basically would be your one-stop shop for registering and doing business in South Africa. So features that would be important there would be helping you with business permits, visa facilitation. We would link you to the Department of Labor, who would help you with the Unemployment Insurance Fund and Compensation Fund registration. We would link you to the South African Revenue Service, who would become key in terms of customs and tax registration. And depending on what activity you're in, different departments, for example, dealing with mining permits or South African Bureau of Standards. These are my contact details, but I think before actually ending the presentation, there's another sector that I should be touching on, taking into account that Gujarat and Surat itself are well known for textiles. Textiles, leather, and clothing is one of the strategic sectors that South Africa is trying to promote. We do have a large market opportunity. Other highlights of the sector would be that it contributes 2.5% to the overall manufacturing output of South Africa. We have 4,500 companies active in the sector itself. And we are looking at developing the sector in terms of promoting opportunities in spinning and weaving, dyeing of fur, knitted and crocheted goods. Leather seat covers is another interesting opportunity. Again, that ties into the automotive sector as well. School uniforms, there's large demand in South Africa for affordable school uniforms. And what happened last year in November 2019 is that the retail clothing, textile, footwear, and leather master plan was signed by government and participants in the sector. And this master plan has 7 commitments, with the key ones being growing local market share, encouraging local sourcing of products, and ending the legal importation of products from around the world. So I think this sector is something that your members would be keen to understand more about. And again, I think overarching this would be taking advantage of South Africa as an investment platform to not only tackle the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and the opportunities that it has to offer, but also setting up a base and exporting into the European Union and looking at the United States through the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It's always many items to discuss, and the time is always too short. So I hope that that this quick overview has provided the members with a taste for what it means to be doing business in South Africa and the opportunities that do exist. Also to let the members know that we are available, we're happy to engage, we are back in the office, we are working each day, and we look forward to engaging with the Chamber on a regular basis and its members, and hoping to find business opportunities and expand the bilateral relations and multilateral relations through BRICS. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. It has been a fantastic overview that you have given, and I'm sure a lot of our members will take away a lot of information so that they can start working on it and develop business with South Africa. But before we go to the question and answer session, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very important friend of the chamber. She is the Secretary General of Indo-African Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Sunanda Rajendran. And I would like Sunanda Ben, can you come on and give your few tips about your engagements with the African continent? She is associated with each and every country in Africa, and your engagements with the African continent and your experience about working in South Africa. Sunanda Ben, the floor is yours.
Hello. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Rohit Bhai, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this August gathering. And well, of course, Surat Chamber of Commerce are our proud partners. And as and when there is something on Africa, I always make sure that my presence is there to share my views with them, or maybe to understand what they wanted to do, so that we can reach with our initiatives in Pan-India and encourage and motivate the business community. And of course, after speaking, the Excellency Consul General has spoken, Mr. Dean has spoken. I don't think, and you are such an excellent speaker, I don't think there is much more for me to say something, but I would just add that there is a very good gold mine, which is Witwatersrand Basin. There's a large gold deposit of the world lies in South Africa. Until date, they have done already 2 billion ounces of gold mine. And there is enormous opportunity for, especially from people of Surat, those who are in gold and diamond jewelry, beside textile hub. And there's also a Kulin diamond, which is a premier mine in Kulin, South Africa. There again, where iconic diamonds are there, where we can, explore the possibilities. And South Africa, of course, is a rainbow nation, has an important position of SADC country. What I suggest, Rohit Bhai, that let's organize some virtual B2B with the help of South African Consulate and DTI, with the South African people who wanted to do business, and let's do something on the private sector B2B virtual platform, and we work out the synergy sometime maybe down the lane, end of this year or beginning of the next year, and try and bring the South Africa and Indian business community, maybe my member, your member, all together, as many as member possible, to explore the possibilities. Because after organizing the webinars, when we have encouraged and motivate the people, the interest should not die. We must, encourage them, and we must see, of course, we are leading various delegation to Africa, but this is the time that COVID is impacted everywhere. The interest should not die, and we should the ball keep on rolling. So that is what my humble request to you. And thank you once again for giving me the opportunity. An excellent show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunanda Ben. I mean, the main reason why I wanted you to talk is because you've been leading this organization for like 40 years now. And when you talk about confidence, you talk about credibility. And the people, the business people, they are always having a problem about confidence and credibility. So the confidence that you give goes a long way in business happening. You know, that is one of the main reasons why I wanted you to talk. And you have done a fantastic job by giving your inputs. Thank you so much, Sunanda Ben. Now before we go to the question and answer session, there are a few questions which I have noted down, and we will take more questions also. There's one, Mr. Trushit Desai. He's asking us, and perhaps Mr. Dean, you can answer this. What are the opportunities for water and waste water management and industrial automation in this segments? What would be the opportunities that you can show to our members?
Okay. Thank you.
Wastewater management, industrial automation.
So with all the mining activity that does take place in South Africa, there's a large demand to treat the wastewater that comes from the mines. And we have a large issue regarding acid mine water wastage. So we think in that sector, there's a lot of opportunity. What I can do is we can take the discussion offline, so I can share with you a fact sheet on the sector itself and link you to my colleagues that focus on the green economy in South Africa.
Okay, just to remind all the participants and members that you can definitely contact the Southern Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry for any type of information that you want. We are actively in touch with the Office of the Consul General in Mumbai, and any information or any guidance that you need, we are there to support you. We are there to help you. And in fact, we can even connect you to the right people, you know, because that is very important, connecting to the right people who can get ultimately business done. Mr. Amit Oswal, he's asking a question. He's from the Beacon Diagnostics. What are the procedures for registering of pharmaceutical products in South Africa? Like what the regulatory systems that are in place, what exactly can be done by the pharmaceutical industry?
Okay, that we have a regulatory body and industry association, SAPRA, that we can link him to. I'll have to offhand, I don't know all the steps and the timeframes that are required. It depends on the product, but we're happy to share that information once we know what the specific details are.
Okay, just again, we can always invite the questions or the guidance that our members need or the participants need. You can write to the chamber on info@sgcci.in. All your questions we will definitely forward to the South African Consulate office in Mumbai. And you can just note once again, info@sgcci.in. That we whatever questions or whatever guidance you need, you can address on this particular email, and we will definitely help you. There's one Mr. Kapil, Dean, and you would be interested most in this because he's talking about importing from South Africa. He wants to import light liquid paraffin, LLP. This is an oil which is used for the textile industry. Number one, is it available in South Africa, if you are aware? And number two, if so, can you connect him to the right suppliers?
Uh, yes, that one, you're right, does make us quite happy because one of the suppliers does actually have a base in India. So we'll be happy to connect the two parties. Currently, that actual representative is stuck in Houston, but he does work Indian hours, so I'm sure the response will be quite swift. It's also one of South Africa's largest companies, so the particular gentleman can feel quite confident in dealing with that company.
Okay, thank you. And can you throw some light on the opportunities in the solar and the renewable energy segment? I mean, solar would be a very important consideration by the government. So in that segment, can you just throw some light? What are the opportunities and how can these opportunities be tapped?
Okay, so solar and renewable energy is also, again, one of the priority sectors of the South African government. Currently, we do experience challenges with the electricity supply. The majority of electricity in South Africa is thermal, supported by nuclear. And we're now looking at moving to a large part of the energy mix being both renewable and gas. But currently, we are looking at numerous projects within the renewable energy space. You find that for example, that company I mentioned earlier just issued an RFP to help mitigate their electricity needs. So there's numerous projects. There's a lot of projects in terms of companies being able to generate their own capacity. Licenses are being will be issued to these companies. We've also had numerous bidding rounds for renewable energy. So the mix is looking at waste to energy, solar is key, and also wind energy. One of the original investors in the early rounds was Suzlon. I think that was about 6-7 years ago in terms of wind energy. So what I can do is also I have a fact sheet I can share with the chamber, and you can share that with your members. There are numerous projects that are available. There are projects and there are promoters that are looking at selling part of their equity in these projects. Round one, which is our first round, you'll probably find that there's a lot of early projects there and opportunity there as well. I believe we are looking at round 5 now. So it's been immensely successful from an investment perspective. And maybe what I should have mentioned to begin with is that in 2019, President Ramaphosa objective was to attract $100 billion worth of investment by 2023. So this again is one of the key sectors that would help to drive that investment in South Africa. And supporting that again comes down to our industrial policy of promoting manufactured products for this sector in South Africa as well. So I think that sector is truly exciting. There's a lot of opportunities. I think based on what we share with you, we can then take the discussion forward.
Okay, thank you. And before I mean, there are a few things like you can, if you can share with us some of the links or some of the websites which can give us information about opportunities that are available for in the government segment, like government projects or government supplies. If there are some websites or some links that can give us this information, or if you get all this information, if you can share it to us, then we can pass it on to our members. Before I mean, there's one more important topic that we have to touch, I mean, as our in charge president Dinesh Bhai also mentioned, and he's also the regional chairman of Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council. And as you are aware that Surat is the manufacturing hub for diamonds. So there is so much that we are importing from South Africa. If we talk only of Surat, Okay, so if we are importing so much, the other big industry of Surat is the textile industry. So can we, like, in order to offset the balance of payment for the Surat region, can we consider something like exporting textiles to South Africa? Can there be a favorable situation? Because we have right now a very important segment, and that is the manufacturing of masks and manufacturing of PPE kits. So if that segment can be tapped, how can we tap that segment? That is number one. And number two, how can the textile industry stalwarts look at opportunities like collaborating in South Africa?
Okay, so maybe to give an overall perspective, the master plan that I mentioned is our strategic plan for that specific sector. It's about rejuvenating the sector and creating jobs in the sector.
Yeah.
And you'll see key to that would be local sourcing and manufacturing. So again, we'll come to the aspect of investing or co-investing, taking advantage of the synthetic fabrics that are manufactured in South Africa, or even the natural fabrics like mohair, for example, providing opportunities. So we feel that partnership is definitely an aspect that can be explored. Government does provide a lot of incentives towards the establishment of manufacturing facilities. Besides the incentives from us, there's also, you'll find that the value chain exists. It is established, as I mentioned, 4,500 producers. And then in terms of the balance of payments, that one would be tricky. I think it would be our colleagues in the Consulate in Johannesburg or in Cape Town or Durban to look at addressing that one. But again, I think through partnership, there's ways and means to work together. And again, I think we mustn't only look at South Africa as the market. We need to cast our vision abroad into Africa, into the region.
Yeah.
So if we look at
it's the gateway to the whole African continent.
Correct. If we look at SADC, just the region surrounding South Africa, it's 300 million consumers. That's before we look at the entire continental free trade agreement of 1.2, 1.3 billion consumers. So yeah. I think there's always opportunity. It's just about finding each other.
Yeah, it's about finding in each other, and that's where I think the suggestion of Sunanabin comes into force. And we should look at having focused B2B meetings, connecting the real people who want to do business, connecting the small people. You see, normally what happens is that the big people, big enterprises, they find their own ways. But it is the MSMEs, the SMEs who really need to have the hand holding and the support and the right type of information. So if they can be provided the right information and they can be connected, SMEs connecting to SMEs, that is the broad base of our economy, and that is where we need to do some very good work. Sunanda, when you wanted to say something, you have come online.
Well, I just wanted to say that at this point of a time, what we should do, we must do some virtual B2B meeting jointly with each other for especially South Africa, where we have the SME members, where people of South Africa want to export something to India, and the mining industry, automation industry. We can have an exhibition and virtual B2B meeting, which I'm doing now with Namibia for 3 days. Similarly, I propose to do with South Africa jointly with your chamber.
Sure.
So that the people can reap the benefit. And once this impact of COVID disappears, then people can go to travel, they start communicating and meeting the people, and they get the momentum for the business.
Okay, fine. That is a very, very, very good suggestion. And I just wanted to inquire, Madam, if Madam Consul General, Madam Andrea Kuhn, we had, just for your information, we had Surat had the privilege of hosting Her Excellency, the Deputy Minister of SMEs, Miss Elizabeth Thabete. She came to Surat when she was the Minister of Tourism at that point of time. She was Minister of some tourism, and then she became the Minister of SMEs. Is she still in place? What is her status like? Any idea about how is she like?
Yes, I think when she visited, she was Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry.
Trade and industry, I think so.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
and also of tourism later on. She was into
that's
three,
right.
four. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
She,
she was. Yes, she was part of DTI. Yeah, correct.
yes,
She was heading the DTI in a way.
yes, yes. No, she's no longer in that position, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, we were planning another visit by the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry
Hmm.
to India, and we had planned to also include a visit to states like Gujarat, but unfortunately we had to reschedule. So that visit is still due. We hope that if we cannot do it by the end of this year, then maybe the beginning of next year. So that is still on the cards. As I said when I started, we do value the enormous potential that the state of Gujarat holds, and it's definitely one of the key priorities for us as the consulate in Mumbai. And we look forward to take this relationship much further than where we are at the moment.
Yeah, but then keep Surat in your mind, madam. I mean, whenever there is a minister coming, you should ensure that the person comes to Surat. I mean, this is the request that you have, and it's a standing invitation for anybody coming. Of course, your invitation is also there. We would like you to come as soon as possible. But so that I think should be the end of our discussion. If there's nothing more, I would like to ask one of our the members of our managing committee, Manish Kapadia, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rohit Bhai. In-charge President of SGCCI, Sri Dinesh Bhai Navadia, Her Highness Miss Andrea Kuhn, the Consul General in the Consulate General of South Africa at Mumbai, Mr. Dean Hoff, Consul Economy in the Consulate General of South Africa at Mumbai, our past President and our Chamber Foreign Minister Sri Rohit Mehta, participant from Chamber, friends from media, and my colleague from SGCCI. As our President and the moderator has said that there exists historic relationship between our two nations and his flourishing day by day on behalf of the SGCCI through interaction as carried out today. There will be huge boosting of economic benefits to the businessmen of both the nations. I express my heartfelt thanks to all participants, organizers, back-end support staff for successfully conducting today's webinar. We are thankful to Her Highness Ms. Andrea Kuhn, the Consul General of South Africa at Mumbai, who has taken this initiative to organize this worth event with us, and a special thanks to Rohit Mehta for coordinating with Consul General Office and helping us holding this event. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. Thank you all.
And before we end, I would also like to thank the involvement of Rajan. He is a very good friend and always the point of contact for us, Rajan at Mumbai and Ravi in New Delhi. They are absolutely fantastic people, and we have a long association and a long friendship with them. And they are always helping us in getting through with any problems or any issues that are existing between which the business people face. So thank you, everybody. And once again, it was a fantastic time, and it was a pleasure having you on board. Thank you. And also thanks to Sunanda Ben. Sunanda Ben, so nice of you to have joined us and taken our request to give your valuable inputs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.